Hi everyone, I'm Tally, this is Farrell, and we are Bored of It. And this is Mr. Sven down here, if you can see his little nose there. And this is Bored of It's Top 20 Games, and today we're going to be going through number 20 to 11.
Yes. So last year we did our first ever top 10 board games of all time for us. And generally when we do these lists, we don't tell each other what we're going to put, so we reveal it live. And this year, Tally said it was too difficult to do a top 10, so she made us do a top 20.
Sorry,
so
everyone.
Can blame her that you have to watch 2 videos now. But I think we can begin by reading out our top 10 list from last year.
Yes.
And then we will go straight into number 10, 20.
Sorry to confuse you there.
Already confused about what we're doing.
Exactly. Yeah, okay. So just a little recap from last time. So going to Farrell's top 10 list first. In at number 10, he had Codenames, number 9, Cascadia, then Caper Europe, then Undaunted, The System, as we're calling it. Number 6 was Great Western Trail. It says here either or both.
Yeah.
I'll say both. Or all.
All now.
Number 5 is Root. Number 4, Barrage. Number 3, Pax Pamir, 2nd edition. Number 2, Brass Birmingham. And number 1 is Scythe.
Great list.
If you do so yourself.
I do.
And then turning to my list, at number 10, I had Undaunted, The System. Number 9, Caper Europe. Number 8, Orleans. Number 7, Quacks of Quedlinburg. Then number 6, I messed up my list a little bit. If you watched,
famously,
that video before, I kind of forgot that Root existed, even though it's in my top 10 games of all time.
And you're like 3rd most played game of all time.
Exactly. Yeah. Look,
easy to forget.
We have a big long list of games that we've ever played. There was a lot on there. I just forgot. It was my bad. So I originally had number 6, Articulate. Quite different from Root, but that has a special place in my heart, that game, for nostalgic reasons. But it's like / Root. Number 5, Great Western Trail. Again, I would say the series there. Number 4, Viticulture. Number 3, Kanban EV. Number 2.5, Barrage, because I also forgot that existed. You going through your list was a revelation to me. I was like, oh yeah, that needs to be in mine. Number 2, Brass Birmingham, and number 1, Scythe. So we had number 1 and 2 both exactly the same.
Yeah. So with that out of the way, let's just move straight to number 20. I will go first, and coming in hot at number 20 is Lords of Vegas. And this is something that it's basically kind of a very interactive gambling-y game. Kind of area control, gambling, Vegas themed, which is always something that's a winner for me.
Yeah.
One of my favorite roll and writes is Welcome to Las Vegas, or New Vegas. So basically, this is really reminiscent of like an old style game, like the kind of classic games you'd play with your family, but there's some nice twists. And basically, you're all fighting over the control of casinos, because when cards are randomly drawn that match the color of the casino, they kind of generate points for the owner, but there can be multiple people within a casino, and kind of the highest die in that casino tells you who the owner is, and you can kind of re-roll them, or you can kind of like build next to them and then change the color of everything to take over. There's a lot of different ways you can mess with people. You can kind of, it's one of those games a bit like Chinatown or Waterfall Park, where you can trade anything pretty much as well. So there's like a lot of trading and negotiation going on. And it's just a really kind of fun, electric, interactive, like silly, kind of zany experience. But I've become a really big fan. And I think there's some expansions coming this year that I'm really looking forward to trying and getting it back.
Good shout. And I think even though it's a reprint, right, the styling of it is kind of looking old school. Yeah. But that adds to the charm and the theme, I think, which typically I wouldn't usually say. But yeah, good pick. My number 20 is, I hope that I can get away with this, but My City / My Island.
They're 2 different.
I think they're quite similar, and I think they deserve to both be there.
I think they're 2 different. One's hexes and one's polyominoes.
Yeah, same.
The system.
The system,
of
exactly.
Legacy games.
The My Something system. Yeah. Okay. So these are games by Ran Knizia. It's a legacy campaign game. So once you've finished with the game, it's done. But essentially, you're building up either a tropical island or your city with these buildings, which are represented by tiles of different shapes. And you have a central deck of cards, which have all of the shapes on them. And you basically go through and flip them over. Everyone plays at the same time. Everyone has to place the same shape in their city or island. And you just score for different things depending on where you are in the game, basically. So can't say too much because of spoilers. But it could be something like place all of your red buildings together or something like this. But it progresses, it changes as it goes. I think it's really fun little game that we like to play on a Sunday night with a cup of tea. It's not too mentally taxing, although I feel like you got a bit stressed when we played My Island recently.
It's a lot of hexagonals.
Yeah, but it's thinky. But you can't spend too much downtime really sitting and considering everything because you're supposed to flip at the same time and everyone should go. Yeah. So it pushes the game forward in quite a nice way. And I think it's really cool how it has different things that you need to score for and different things you might think about. Some of them are maybe more medium to longer term strategies. You might not win that game, but maybe you get some other bonuses that can help you later. Or you can just go for straight wins. So I think it's very interesting it pulls you in a lot of different directions and you have to roll with what shapes come out, but think about those things. So I think it's really nice puzzle game.
Yeah, I mean, both of them are really great little legacy games. You know, a single game of it takes 15 minutes, but usually you would play a kind of chapter, which is 3 games, so about an hour probably all told. But I think it was something we've really both enjoyed. It wouldn't be like my top 20 games of all time.
It's in mine.
But I think it's a very pleasant experience I would recommend to a wide variety of people, especially if you're just kind of wondering what the whole legacy game thing is all about. But let's go to number 19. I've picked another modern classic for my number 19, and that is Libertalia.
Oh.
And I know there's 2 versions. There's the original version, which is very kind of like old school pirate themed, classic pirate theme, and the new version from Stone Maya Games, which is a kind of re-implementation, reprint with kind of anthropomorphic animals. We only have that one. We received it as a review copy. But it's something that actually, when I first started playing it, I think like our review is okay on it back when we did that years ago. But the more I've played it, the more it's grown on me. It's something that I've grown to really love and really enjoy getting out on the table. You can play with a variety of people, play with your parents, play with friends, and it's always like a laugh and interactive. And in this game, essentially, everyone kind of will start the game with a hand of cards and they're all going to be the same. And each round, you're going to pick one of these cards to play, and it represents a person on the ship. And then these cards are kind of going to activate in different ways. So the ones with a lower number will do their power first, but then pick treasure last, and then kind of when you get to the highest number, you go back down picking treasure from the island, and you're kind of scoring points from the treasure you get and some other ways. You're kind of just trying to get money, basically. But it becomes really interesting because different people play different characters at different times, and then every round you get new characters. So people end up with really asymmetric hands that can really change up how the game plays, and there's so many wild and wonderful interactions with different cards that it's almost a game where you can just play a card and something will happen, which is great for people, you know, because some games it's like, if you're new to it, you can make a mistake and it ruins you. Here, you're almost just as likely something good will happen just by playing a card. But it's just, a lot of laughs, a lot of silliness, and something I've really grown to enjoy steadily, and now it's made it into my top 20.
Very nice pick. Like you said, always a good laugh, and can get it out with anyone, I feel, as well. So really nice. Okay, my number 19 is Spots.
Classic.
Talked about this game
unsurprising.
A fair amount on the channel since we got it. So
well, some of us have.
Yeah. Can't stop talking about Spots. This is a very lightweight family game in a very small little box, and basically it's a little bit of like push your luck dice chucking game. It's about dogs because dogs have spots and dice have spots, as it says on the box. And essentially you have these dog cards which have little cartoon dogs on them that have spots on them that correspond to the dice, basically. And you complete a dog when you assign dice to your dog, and the first person to complete 6 dogs will be the winner. But the novel part is how you roll those dice and how you get to assign them, because there's 6 tricks in the middle, and they are what allows you to roll the dice in different ways and assign the dice. So one of the tricks might be roll 8 dice and pick a number, and every one that comes up in that 8 you have to place on your dogs or in your yard. Or roll 1 dice, then roll 1 more, and you can keep going, or something like this. When you pick a trick, you flip it face down so that nobody else can actually use it. So that's also a little bit of meanness in it, but not really, because once there's only 1 trick left available, they all flip back up. But it just, you can use that to shaft people, basically. If you know that they want to pick a certain trick and they go after you, you can just pick it so they can't have it until maybe a couple of rounds. But the trick is that you have this yard where any unassigned dice that you can't place on the dogs go in the yard. And once the dice values in there go more than 7, then you go bust. And then you have to lose all of the dice from the yard and the dogs that aren't yet complete. So you lose your progress, basically. And then you can do very push your luck, where if all of the dogs that you have uncompleted get completed in a single round, you automatically complete them. Or play it more safe, where you can complete maybe 1 or 2, but then you have to take a whole turn to say, okay, I'm completing the ones that are completed and flip them over so they're like safe. You like to do the danger mode, where you just want to chuck all the dice and complete them all in one and get the most as possible. So yeah, push your luck. Very fun. Another game that you can really play with anyone. We've introduced this to a few people and they always love it, actually. And you got this for my birthday, and I got a bit addicted to it. Yeah, it's a really great present. I mean, anything with dogs on it is a winner for me. So automatic tick has to go into the top 20.
Yeah, no, Spots is a great little kind of party game, family weight game. I think it does something really well in that it has a lot of different little twists and turns that just add a bit of interesting decision space and crunch to it. You know, like you say, the fact that you can push your luck and try and do everything at once, or take it kind of dog by dog. The fact that with these tricks, there's like 20 of them that come in the box. So you can mix and match and have really different games with different feels. Just an interesting little box.
Yeah, and there's also chaos mode where you can put all of the tricks in, which we actually haven't tried yet, but I'm
sure
like to do
eventually
that
we
one
will.
day. Yeah.
Moving on to number 18. This is a game that has, I think, fallen out of my top 10. I'm pretty sure it was in there around the end. And it is Cascadia.
Yeah.
And I think this comes down to the fact that we've played some similar games to it, because before we only had Cascadia, and now we kind of have all the different ones like Calico and some other tiling kind of puzzle games. And also the fact that I think it's not so much what I've been really enjoying the last couple of months here. I think you see from my list, I'm enjoying a bit more kind of like interactive, maybe zany or crunchier games. You know, if they're light, I want them a bit zany, something like what I've already said before. And if they're kind of heavy, I want them real heavy. So Cascadia is a little tiling kind of puzzle game where you have hexagonal tiles with landscapes on them, and you also have animal tokens. And on your turn, you kind of take a pairing of the two, and then you have to put them somewhere in your habitat, and you're trying to get the terrains to go together because you get points for how big they are in a contiguous group. And the animals, they have all kinds of different scoring conditions that change each game. So the push and pull, I just think is a really delightful little puzzle game that it has the most perfect balance of ease of rules versus kind of crunch of gameplay. Because it's just, all the different scoring interesting conditions are really interesting. The push and pull, I love should I go for the animals or should I go for the terrain? There's a bit of, you also get points for which player does the best in these. So you get some competition in there. And it's just such a delightful little puzzle game that plays in 30, 45 minutes. Something we've played a lot of times. I think at one point it was in or around our most played games. Probably fallen off a bit, but I think it's something that I would never turn down a game of.
Yeah.
And for that light tile laying puzzle game, I'm never going to pick anything above it.
Yeah. Okay. My number 18 is also something that fell quite far out of my top 10.
Scythe.
No. That is Viticulture, still a Stonemaier game.
Wasn't that like number 4?
It was number 4, yeah, exactly. I think the only reason why it has dropped
down... Do you know
down...
what that means? It's like more than 4 times as bad than it was. It's
no,
4 times worse.
Bad.
You heard it here first.
No, that's not true. It just comes down to us literally not having played it for so long. We've played obviously so many games in between playing it last and playing, now. So maybe if we would get it back out again, it could jump back up. But maybe the distant memory of it is just, pushing it down. But it still deserves to be in my top 20 because I would never turn down a game of this, actually. Yeah. And I have some very fond memories around it. So when we first started playing it, we were having Viticulture Fridays, having friends round every Friday pretty much, weren't we, during the COVID times. Getting some wine, having some nibbles. So I just have a really nostalgic, good feeling about it. But I also think it's a really nice game. It's basically a worker placement game that's about making wine in a vineyard in Tuscany. And it's medium weight, I would say. And you just have to go through all of the seasons and do all of the tasks in order to make wine, like plant vines, build buildings so that people can come and visit your vineyard, etc., etc. And I still think it's a really, really great game. We just haven't played it in a long time. Yeah,
I think it's similar for me because it's a game I really enjoy, but we haven't played it. I also wonder when we're talking about it, it's very straight worker placement. And I think the theme does it a lot and it is a great game. But do you also wonder if it's fallen out a bit because in the time since it was so high, there's all of these Euro games with, you could say, more interesting worker placement. Things like Carnegie and stuff like that, where it's true. Like very different in how you place your workers. And then maybe it's hard to look back at that and having not played it and say, well, I'm just putting some workers out.
True. A lot of the ones that we like now are worker placement with a twist, aren't they, I would say, or some kind of novel mechanism that's thrown in. You're probably right. Although I still like straight worker placement. I also really like it because it is one of the first games that I played, which made me realise that games can have really cool themes in modern board gaming. So maybe, I don't know, I had some perception years ago that most board games were about space or war or whatever it might be, and then actually no, there's a board game about making wine. So that really opened my mind up, I would say. So it has a special place in my heart because of that.
Moving on to number 17, my pick is Return to Dark Tower. And I believe this was my number 1 game of the year. The year it came out 2-3 years ago, I think. This is a reimagining of Return to Dark Tower. I can't remember the original name, it was just Dark Tower. But a game from the 80s with a big plastic light up tower that kind of spits skulls out and has like a chip in it and it rotates and all that good stuff. And Restoration Games has kind of reimagined the game, kind of redesigned it for modern audiences. They had a lot of high profile designers work on it, people you would know from other massive games. So this is a cooperative game, so it's quite a surprise to be on the list because we don't really
that's true.
lean towards cooperative games so much. But it's just, for me, one of the most perfect balances or probably the most perfect balance of cooperative games we've played, because I believe it has a quite simple rule set and action selection system, but it also gives you enough interesting decisions to make to stop it from being boring. I think the difficulty is perfectly balanced in terms of how difficult it is to win or not. It's kind of at the ratio we like, and there's always the option to make it harder as well. So there's a lot to like, but essentially what you're doing is you have this massive plastic light up tower in the middle of the board, and it's going to rotate and spit out skulls. And essentially you're trying to do a mission and there's different scenarios. It's kind of an app-driven game. And you have to do something to make the big baddie come out of the tower, and then you have to defeat them basically by fighting them. They all have a gimmick. And there's all these different things you can do. You can kind of cleanse corruption from the land. You can go to shops and stores and kind of equip. You can go into dungeons. You can fight monsters. And it's just really interesting because you have all this push and pull. Do I do this? Do I do that? There's not enough time to do everything. Different players have their different corners of the map, so it prevents quarterbacking.
Yeah.
And the app is probably the best board gaming app I've seen. It's so slick and well presented and
really
easy
good
to use. And it's just have so much fun when I play it. And it's also great fun to introduce to people because obviously they're instantly taken in by this big tower that's shooting skulls all over the table.
Yeah, I also really like it. Wouldn't make my top 20, spoiler alert, just because, I don't lean to cooperative games. Like neither of us do, but I think you like them a little bit more than me, I would say. Because you're usually the one like leading it. But that is why I do really like Return to Dark Tower, because exactly like you said, there isn't so much quarterbacking in there because you have your own little territory to look after. I really like that. And it is just a novelty. It's one of those things where it is a bit of a gimmick with the tower, but it works well, actually. It doesn't feel tacked on.
Yeah.
It is like the central part of the game. It's a good one. So my number 17 is Dead Reckoning, or Scythe on Sea, as we like to call it, as we think that it has some similarities with Scythe in the way that you're kind of racing to get objectives. There's a little bit of exploration. There's a bit of, kind of optimizing how you go about doing things. But essentially, you're a pirate, right? Or you can choose whether you want to be a pirate or.
Well, I think you're technically,
You're.
I don't really know who you are.
You're a crew.
You are
on a
a
ship.
collective.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going around. Maybe you want to control some islands. You want to do some production on the islands. Maybe you want to fight with some ships, merchant ships, or other opponents, other crews, in order to fulfill these different objectives. But the key component of Dead Reckoning, of why it shines, is this card crafting system. So all of your crew members are represented by cards, and everyone starts out with the same crew members and the same basic skills. But as you go and explore, you pick up these plastic sleeves which have different bonuses or different actions on them, which slide into the plastic sleeves of your crew members, so that next time when you play them, they have different skills. So you're always upgrading them. You can really customize which crew members you would like to have, which sort of actions. So you end up with quite a different hand and different sort of actions and bonuses that you can get to the other players. And that's really the crowning jewel of the game and why it makes it so different.
Yeah, it's no secret that we both love Scythe. And as you said at the beginning, it's very reminiscent of Scythe, all the way down to the way the game ends by players getting a certain number of achievements instead of stars. Right. So I will just say now that my number 16 is Dead Reckoning. So almost a total crossover. And for all the same reasons, I just think it has that kind of almost efficiency puzzle element, because it is a race to kind of get these achievements and bring an end to the game. But I love that there is all these different ways to do it. You can be a marauder and hassle the other players. You can kind of take control of islands and just set up castles basically and defend them and just make a lot of money. There's all kinds of different ways. And the addition, I think what's really propelled it for me is the addition of the expansions, the Saga expansions, where they're kind of like semi-legacy expansions where you play and you draw cards from the expansion and then adds new cards in, takes cards out. So that changes things up a lot as well, makes things more interesting, makes it more replayable. So Dead Reckoning, my number 16, I think it's absolutely terrific if you're looking for a pirate-themed game.
Okay, so moving on to my number 16, and that is Coffee Traders. Yeah, a bit controversial maybe.
Yeah, I think you're probably the only person ever. to have it in your top 20.
Really like this game, despite not being...
Not even the designer has it in his top 20.
Why though? It's good. It's good. It's a big, heavy, crunchy Euro, very, very complex, about making a cooperative with different kind of coffee farms in different regions of the world, and then getting it and selling it fair trade to the different cities where they have a lot of coffee houses. It's essentially, it's a little bit cooperative, right? And not directly, but you have to basically, because you're trying to help the farmers, it's more rewarding to go to the same regions when you take the different actions. So you might have to go and help build the farms up, something like this in a region in, I think one of the regions is Ethiopia. But it's better if like more people go there, basically. And I really like how that ties in with the theme of the game in a way. I like big, heavy, crunchy Euros with a nice theme, basically, that have a great production. That would be my favourite genre of game. And I'm not very good at it at all. You're much better at optimising for Euros. But I just think it was because it's down in the basement now. You took it down in the basement and you want to sell it. It's like RIP. But I guess it's nothing different in a way, because I think it's quite similar to like Battelle Lacerda games, right? In that 100%. Kind of style. But yeah, I guess it just ticks those boxes for me. We don't get it out very much, and you prefer to sell it. And I think a lot of that has to do with the horrendous setup, basically, is why it's kind of far down the list. Yeah,
there are very few games I refuse to set up on my own, right? Because I generally do a lot of the setup, and a lot of the time I don't really care. But that is one of the very, very few games I won't do on my own. I just won't do it because it's grim.
I think you're a bit down on it as well, because you're the one that reads the rule books, and apparently that was not so great. I don't really read the rule books so much, so... That's probably why I don't have such a negative sentiment about it.
Yeah, when it came out, I was very disappointed because at the time Capstone Games published it, and they were a publisher we really liked, and the stuff they were putting out and the quality, and it just seemed like it never had any proofreading or quality control. There were broken components. The rule books are absolutely, it's the worst rule book I've ever read in the hundreds and hundreds of board games. All these things. So it was really uphill to get it to the table. And I don't hate it as a game. I think it's a really good heavy Euro. The problem is if you play two players like us, then you kind of have a dummy third player, and so you have to control that, and it's already a really complex game.
Yeah.
So then it's just another thing on top for whoever has to control it, and that makes it less fun. And then it's also so complex and brutal that it's hard to introduce to other people.
Yeah.
So it just, for me, won't get played, and that's why I'm a bit down on it.
Yeah, definitely. I think we did try to introduce it to a friend at one point, and it didn't really go so well. But yeah, we don't get to play it very often, but I like it.
Yep. For my number 15, you might recognise it if you have recently watched our best board games for two players video, as this was my number 2, and that is Cape of Europe. So this is a game we've gone on and on about on this channel, so I won't say too much. It's just kind of a 2-player head-to-head tug-of-war game themed around thieves competing heists in a certain European city, and it is absolutely brilliant in every aspect: the production, the crunch, the kind of back and forth. It's a drafting game, so you take a card and you pass, and then they take a card, back and forth. So there's a lot of cool little twists. The fact that each city adds different cards into play, so then you have different mechanisms. So you kind of have 4 mini games in one almost.
Yep.
Just one of the very best 2-player only games, and this has fallen out of my top 10. And I think that's just because we've played it so much, it's got to a point where I've seen everything, and I think it would really need an expansion at some point to breathe some life into it if you know what I mean. I don't think there's anything better, but my desire to play it is less so because I feel like I've seen it all. But that doesn't change how brilliant a game it is, and that's why it's still in my top 20.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice. So my 15 is Dune Imperium / Uprising. Am I allowed to do that?
Yeah.
If I really had to pick one, I'd probably say Uprising now.
I definitely would if I was picking between them.
So this is a game based on the Dune series, and it's a deck building game with some worker placement as well. And essentially all of the cards in your hand have symbols on them, and they relate to symbols that are on the board. And when you send a worker, you also have to play a card that matches the symbol of the space where you want to send them, basically. And there's different ways to score points, and it's a race to 10 or 12, depending on how you're playing. But there's all sorts of twists and turns thrown in. You do battles that can get you points, or it can also get you resources. There are intrigue cards, which are secret little cards, which you can kind of play at certain times to surprise your opponent, or maybe that has some mechanism to help you get points as well. But yeah, we've really been enjoying it because we got the Dune Uprising, and we were playing a lot of it because we wanted to do a BIOS guide, actually. So if you're interested in the differences between the two, check that out.
And the expansions and everything.
Exactly, yeah. So we played it a lot, and I think it was really a grower for me, this game. Like, I thought it was good when we first played it, but the more you play, there's a lot of cards in this game. So you get to see all of the content over time, and then really see that there's different ways to play it, basically, and combo different things together. I think in the beginning, you think that or I did at least, the combat is the only way to kind of get points, but then it opens up the more you play, and you're like, actually, no, I could not win any combat really, and actually just go about it by...
Especially with the expansions as well.
Yeah, there's so many other ways to do it, and it's very, very interesting to try and do what you need to do, but you are limited by the 5 cards in your hand and the symbols that they have. So there's, you know, you have to always be optimizing for what you can do and changing your plan and pivoting, but at the same time, it's a tense race. So yeah, just really, really great game. We've been really enjoying, and definitely a grower for me.
Yeah, I'm sure many people are going to agree with you on that. And it's going to be in a lot of people's top 20.
Yeah.
I think it's in the top 20 or top 10 even, well, the original on BGG. So a very, very popular game. Again, if you watched our best 2-player games video, you'll recognize this game because it was my number 1. So I've grouped these together in this list. And that is the Undaunted system. So yeah, number 14, the Undaunted system, because I don't want to pick a game. It's the system itself.
Fair. Fair.
Which is what we did last year as well. So this has fallen out of the top 10. And that is mainly because last year was the year of Undaunted. We went from, I think, having played about 8 games of Normandy to it being our most played board game across the system of the year, at the end of the year. So we obviously really had a great time with it. We experienced everything there was to offer. But since then, and since our buyer's guide, we really haven't got it out or played it. Other things have taken its place. Lately, the Imperium series of games. And because it's very card-based, I think there's some similarities there for me. Like, not a lot, but you know what I mean. Because that's kind of taken our place, and we've been working on that buyer's guide.
Yeah.
So I think, a bit like you were saying with Viticulture, Undaunted, the memories like faded for me a bit.
Yeah.
I think we need to get it out again. There's definitely... We would love to replay the Legacy game, Stalingrad, again, see how that goes, as it's branching as well, so there's different content to see. But essentially, Undaunted is a series of World War II games. It's based around deck building and combat. So you kind of start with a mini deck, and then you can draft soldiers in. Depending on the scenario, you kind of pick which ones you want to recruit, and you go after objectives, and they can be asymmetrical, it can be the same for both sides. And it's just very tense, very simple system, but it's got such a punch in terms of the emotion and the energy and the ups and downs that you get in this little clean, tight experience. So Undaunted, number 14. Absolutely love the system.
Yeah, good pick. It's what we like to call stress fun.
Yeah,
It can be
exactly.
very, very stressful. And I personally really feel very strategic when I'm playing it, because you can really go on the offense depending on the objective of each side. You can decide that you want to just go out, try to get the flag that you need to get the objective, or maybe decide that you want to hold back and be a bit more defensive and try and pick off your enemies before you go out. So it feels very strategic, even though the actions are very simple. You're just kind of like playing cards. So I think the balance is just like perfect. My number 14 is My Father's Work. And this is a worker placement game that has a really fun theme. So it's essentially about a kind of mad scientist who creates some experiments, does some works, and then that kind of work gets passed down through the generations. You start off as like the grandfather, and then you go down like 2 generations, and you want to be completing experiments. So you have to be getting resources, and you use your workers to do that, to do science. But then the experiments that you do have prerequisites. So to get to the big ones, you need to have completed a certain amount of like smaller experiments. So you have to really build on the work. So that's why, it's like the knowledge is being passed down through the generations. But some of the knowledge is lost, because every generation you can only keep a certain amount of completed experiments. So you have to try and do as much as you can in that generation to kind of score as many points as you can, but then it gets lost, but you can keep one for the next time. But it's just a really engaging game with the theme. It has an app that accompanies it as well. So there's some twists and turns. Maybe someone gets privy to certain information in the app as part of the storyline. So that's quite fun. We think that the storyline isn't written the best.
No, it's a bit... Yeah, I think there's both the issue that the writing is too much and too flowery, and it goes really over the top and can make it a bit confusing.
It's like over thematic.
And then the other thing is that sometimes it's not really clear what's going on with the decisions you have to make in the app, or the outcomes, or it could have been better implemented. And I think that's the biggest negative of the game.
Exactly.
But also a very good game.
Yeah, it's super funny as well. It has some really good like flavor text as well, even on the cards.
The built-in like comedy and theme, the dark humor is impeccable.
Exactly. And you have different workers, because you have your estate and they're different types. So it's you, your spouse, the caretaker. The caretaker is too ugly, sadly, to go and do the actions that are in town. So there's like a shared story book which has different actions, or you can do actions on your player board. So it's worker placement, but like we were saying a little bit earlier with viticulture, where that's straight worker placement, this is like completely worker placement with a twist, and very thematic and very funny, basically. So I think the novelty of it is why I want it in my top 20.
That's fair enough. I think there's a few things for me that would keep it out of my top 20. I think it would be like very high in my all-time list of games. I think just the length for one. It doesn't really bother me so much, but I think it would just keep it out, because it is a long game, because you kind of do these 3 generations, and then the Apple implementation we've talked about. But there's a lot of interesting stuff, because you pick a scenario basically when you have a game. So then, because different scenarios come in the box, there's a lot of replayability, and because of the branching paths, you see different things. You get different work placement spaces each game. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on, and it's a game I'm really fond of as well. Moving on to number 13. I'm pretty sure my number 13 is going to shock you. Oh. Because it's a new game to us.
It's in your top 20 of all time.
Yeah, it's cult of the new.
Wow.
New games all the way.
Okay.
So this is Agricola. New game for us that's 20 years old.
The only thing that I'm shocked at is that it's not higher, to be fair. You love that sustenance part.
It was originally, but I think another game we played recently pushed it backwards.
Okay.
So Agricola is famous for being an old school worker placement game. It kind of was one of the big early proponents of worker placement. It was also one of, I think, the first games, if not the first, to introduce meeples. Rather than just like little cubes.
Okay.
And one of my favorite things is that even we have the revised edition, and on the box it says now includes Animeeples, which is a terrific way to get people to buy games. So this is a kind of mean, harsh, pretty straightforward worker placement farm building simulator. I mean, that's it, right? So there's it does like so many cool things that I think I haven't, out of all the games we've played, I haven't really seen them aped that much, and I'm surprised, or they're not that common. And so much of it is so interesting. And it just goes to show that even if you see a game which is 20 years old, but it's seen as a classic, try it out.
Yeah.
Because I've fallen in love with it. And essentially what you're doing is, you're building up your farm, and there's all these different things you can score for. And you kind of need to do all of them, because if you haven't done one of them, you get negative points, and that multiplies the more you haven't done. Collecting different kinds of livestock, building fields, having different types of crop, all these weird little things. And there's so many things I love about it. The fact that the worker placement spaces, that you gain more and more and more every round. So it opens up in quite an interesting way, yet it manages to keep certain spaces. Like you have a brutal fight over, essential. You have a brutal fight over them, because there might only be one space that produces this resource. So, and the resources, another cool thing, they accumulate round after round until somebody takes them. So it's always that balance and interesting decision of, there's not quite enough for me, but if I leave it, then Tally might take it, and then I get nothing. And all of these, there's just so many cool twists and turns. It's mean, which is something we really like. So I really enjoy that it's like a hard game. Yeah. You can get negative points if you can't feed your family. You're always scraping for everything. But it's also nice that you build up a tableau in front of you. So you start with like an empty player board, and eventually you're going to have all these kind of things occupying it. And that's always nice to look at and see how you progressed. Yeah. But if you like worker placement and you haven't tried it, if you like mean games and you haven't tried it, play Agricola. I cannot tell you enough how good it is.
If you like sustenance farming.
I love sustenance farming. It's my favourite type of farming.
Didn't we go away like shortly after playing it, and at one point you're just like, all I can think about is sustenance farming?
Yeah, that's when we went to Poland, and we'd play like maybe 1 or 2 games of it, and I was just sat there going,
I just wanted to get home.
It was just like around my head like sustenance farming.
My number 13 is Orleans.
Ooh,
yes.
Not surprising, but it's out of the top 10 now.
Yeah, I think that is just down to not playing it in a while again.
They released a new expansion, not that we have any expansions for it, but they released a new expansion like this year.
Okay.
So we should check that out.
Yeah, 100%. And I think probably one of the biggest reasons why we don't get out more often is the setup is a little bit painful.
Should buy an organizer.
Yeah. You still have to, it's the flipping of those tiles though, and you have to place them. You can't really do anything about that. It's a bit annoying. But anyway, this is a kind of classic beige trader game. Although it has a twist, and that is that it has bag building. So all of your workers are little chips in a bag. You pull them out a certain amount every round, which can change if you progress in a certain track. It's just basically a lot of tracks. And you pull them out, and maybe you can have 6 workers that round, and then you have to use the workers that you've pulled out. And then on your action selection, certain actions will require, say, a boater, a priest, and a knight, or something like that. So you need certain combinations of workers in order to be able to do those actions. But of course, it depends on what you pulled out of the bag. So you really have to kind of optimize and work with what you have in order to do as many actions as possible with the workers that you pulled out, basically. And it's just going up a lot of tracks. And there's a mechanism where you can move a boat along the river, and you collect different resources. That also gets you some points as well. So yeah, Euro with the twist of bag building, basically. But remember when we got it, I was absolutely loving it, and I made you play 3 games in a row, I think, when we first got it. I mean, I like bag building as a mechanism generally. Maybe that's a hint at something that might be to come.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, but I just think that's really fun, basically, to optimize what you have and having to kind of pivot and work with what you have.
Yeah, Orleans is a terrific classic Euro game. It would definitely be my 21 to 30, I think.
Just missed out.
Yeah, just missed out. I think it's that setup. I think there's 2 things: the setup and the fact that I don't think it changes so much each game. I very, very much enjoy playing it, but I do think if I played it a lot, like more than we do now, which is, we get it out here and there,
Yeah.
I would get a bit bored of it.
That's fine.
Maybe we just need an expansion to spice things up, and then there's more, because you obviously have the same event tiles every time you play, just slightly different order, and it's like, stuff like that. But I think it's brilliant in its design for sure. So my number 12 is kind of harkening back to the beginning of my list. These fun, interactive games that make you laugh a lot, and it is something that we first played this year. And it is another modern classic. So been around for 20 years, but new to us, relatively. And that is Ra, the Reiner Knizia auction game. And we're talking specifically about the 25th century reprint. And we got the deluxeified version, and it was so worth it because it's so tactile. And essentially, this is almost in some ways a very basic auction game. But there are so many interesting twists and turns, and it's very interactive. That you get a lot of laughs, you get a lot of schadenfreude, a lot of interaction, a lot of fun, basically. Keyword is fun. So it's just you pull tiles out of a bag, and it's all kinds of different set collection, different tiles score different ways. Some tiles are bad and you don't want them because they remove tiles. Other tiles bring the end of the round closer and they don't get bid on. But essentially, when you start an auction, you're bidding for everything in the row. And the way you bid is you have these little chips with pre-printed numbers on them. So everyone can see what everyone's bidding power is. Yeah. And when you bid, you swap that chip out for one in whatever's kind of in the bidding row. So I might have a 12, and then I swap it out for the 1 there. And now next round, I'll have a 1. And then someone else will bid, and they'll swap that out for my whatever, and then, so it all gets mixed up, and you always also have to be careful of the bidding power that you're carrying into the next round.
Yeah.
And it's just so much fun because you can kind of stay in the game late and hope that everyone else will use all their bids, and then you have free range to get as much as you can until you reach the end of the round. But it's often
the danger zone.
It's often a push your luck because every time you pull one of these tiles, it gets closer to the end. And it also introduces a sense of danger if it comes around really quickly and people haven't bid a lot.
Yeah.
It's just something that you really kind of laughing a lot at what the other players are doing, how things turn out, what gets drawn out of the bag. You always, if someone's still in it and you want them to fail miserably, everyone chants rah, 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 rah. So I've just had so much fun playing it. It was, I think, one of our most played games last year. And again, a lot like Libertalia, the more we've played it, the more it's grown on me. We played it really recently as a warm-up with some people we introduced it to way back when, and they really liked it then. We all had such a good time. We instantly played it again, back to back.
Yeah.
So just such a great game.
I think with a lot of Reiner Knizia games, for me at least, I always think in the first game, it seems kind of simple. And then every time you realise how much depth there actually is, even if it's something simple and new things. Once you've played one game, you're like, I could have played it like that, or actually I could do that to make that person do that, or like some psychological tactics might come into play there, especially with Ra about trying to bluff with people, or such a good game. My number 12 is Carnegie. So
sorry, I was daydreaming about Ra.
You looked at me so dead in the eyes.
I was just thinking, I was like looking at the numbers were like floating around in my head. Yeah, Carnegie.
So Carnegie. And this is one of those games that we were kind of alluding to before about worker placement with a twist. So it's about Andrew Carnegie going and building stuff in the US, basically. So building bridges, residential areas in different cities. It's Euro where you're scoring for a lot of different things, a lot of different objectives or whatever it might be. But the little twist is that you have an office with workers in it, and you have different actions within your office that you have to place your workers on in order to be able to take those actions. But you have to have the workers placed in there up front, because essentially you go around turn by turn and one person gets to choose the action that everybody has to do that turn. So maybe it's a HR action, and then all of the HR department tiles that you have in your office kind of get activated if you have workers on them. And then it might be a building action, and then everyone has to do the same. So you're reliant on what other people are going to pick essentially as the next action to take. And you have to be always prepared for what someone else might pick and think about the order. You've got limited workers. You might not be able to put all of your workers in all of the departments. But I know that you might do HR next time. So I need to make sure that I've got people in my HR. And you kind of send workers out to the different areas as well. And when the action is selected, a certain region like West, East will also get activated. And then you pull your workers back from that region and then you get some income. So really lots to plan ahead and prepare for.
A planning game.
Definitely a planning game. You like to pull in mean tactics where you select an action just because you know someone else might not be able to do it because they didn't prepare
it says in the rule
properly.
Book.
Yeah, of
it
course.
says
and then
do over the other players as much as possible.
Direct, like verbatim.
Pretty much.
So yeah, great production as well. Really beautiful game. The components are thick and just nicely produced.
Really terrific production.
Yeah, it's just, again, I like Euros with a twist, basically, with good production. So again, that's just ticking those boxes for me.
Yeah, so Carnegie's great. I mean, that's why I brought it up with viticulture, because it's a really novel take on worker placement. It's almost hard to say it is worker placement, although it is, but it's just so interesting, unlike anything else, yet a really brilliant game. So that's one that also, like Orleans, would probably be in my 21 to 30, not in my top 20. Here we are, the final game of this video, number 11. And mine is something that has fallen out of my top 10. And that is because something else has replaced it, pretty much one for one. But I still think that this game is one of the most brilliantly designed games, if not the most. And that is Pax Pamir, 2nd edition. And this is a game about, I think it was called The Great Game in Afghanistan in the 1800s. It was a conflict where kind of England and Russia were trying to control, and also regional forces were involved. And in this game, there are 3 factions, kind of local Afghani, the English and the Russians. And you kind of will side with one of them, but you can flip at any moment. And you're trying to, there's 4 kind of scoring times, and you're trying to be in a good position because you score in different ways. And it's about which faction has the most control, and you can be working with other players and then stab them in the back and become British, and then you're working with someone else, or every player can be against each other. And it's just so interesting in the way it works, and it's a complete sandbox of possibility, and there's nothing quite like it. And it was very high for me last year, I think number 3 or 4 or something. And I just wish we played it more. I'd quite like to get it out a few times to play it, at least 2-player, if not finding other people. It's just such a brilliant game, and it's something that you actually didn't like till about the 6th time we played it.
Yeah, I just didn't get it. I thought it was all right, but I didn't understand that a lot of it is what happens like off the board. So it's the strategy around, like you say, stabbing people in the back, but it depends on what cards you have. And it just took me a long time for it to click. And I just thought, oh, it's some cards, you play some cards and things happen. But you really have to think so strategically. And it just took a long time for me to click with it. I'm glad I did, because I also really like it as well. Beautiful production, again, very unique. The map is a roll-up cloth mat, so it just looks so nice on the table, the way that everything's presented as well. Yeah,
and it's so savage, and you're just looking for that one little opening to get something over on someone.
Yeah.
And it's knife fight in a phone box.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. My number 11's a little bit different to that.
Spots again.
Similar. It is Rustling Leaves.
Solid pick.
So that is
solid pick.
Not so brutal as Pax Premier.
No, it's not.
No.
Unless you roll 4x4 every single time.
Yeah, exactly. Then that would be pretty on par with Pax Premier, I would say. So this is a very cute little roll and write. It comes with a pad of sheets that has 4 different seasons in them. So it changes up how you score for different things. So that's really nice. So spring, summer, winter, autumn. And essentially you just roll 2 dice, and whatever the pips on them are, you have to draw a square on your little map, on your sheet that corresponds. So if it's 2x2, draw a 2x2 grid. And then you have to select one thing within that, because the sheets have like trees, plants, animals on them according to the season. You have to tick one thing to score for. So you might have a big 4x4, but maybe there's like 2 fir trees in there. You can only, if you choose to score for trees, you can only tick the trees, and you have to ignore everything else. So every time that you roll and draw a shape, you have to pick something to score for. It's just very simple, very easy, but I really like it. It has a special place in my heart because we always take it on holiday with us.
I think we've only played it on holiday.
That might be true, actually.
And I think it's one of our most played games, which says a lot.
Probably never played it in the house.
No, I can't remember ever playing it in the house.
It comes in a small box. You don't need very much space, of course, because you're just rolling a couple of dice and your sheets maybe that big or something, and some pens. But I just think it's very cute, very, again, like well produced, even though there's like not too much to it, but it just looks so nice as well. And yeah, we've often said before that the way that we rank games in videos like this, you're more scientific about it, although I feel like maybe not so much in this list.
No,
usually you're thinking about the mechanics and the setup time and all of this, and I'm more I like it, I have a good feeling about it. So that's definitely the case for Rustling Leaves.
Yeah, Rustling Leaves is absolutely brilliant. I think it's just not the style of game that I would have in my top 20, but it's one of my favorites, if not my favorite roll and write. I think the fact that you have the 4 different seasons as well, so you have 4 different maps, adds a lot of replayability.
Yeah.
It's just something, we love to play on holiday with a wine. So I think it's a great pick.
Yeah.
And I look forward to taking it on our next holiday.
Yes, me too.
So that was our 11 to 20. Next video will be our top 10. Very exciting. So if you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing so then you know about that next video. Cliffhanger. We'd really appreciate it. It helps us grow the channel. If you have any questions about any of these games, let us know. We'd be happy to help you out. And we just really appreciate you watching, and we hope it was interesting. And we will see you next time for that top 10. See ya.